He's a type 1 diabetic. He produces no insulin. He is 100% dependent on the administration of artificial insulin, you know, and that is, I guess that was like for 16 years up to that point in time, of which 8 or 9 years had been in the federal prison system. And he had been functioning reasonably well in the federal system up until the time they sent him to the SMU. And then they would sometimes give him insulin before they fed him in the morning. So when his insulin was already, his blood sugar was already low, they'd want to give him insulin, which could put him into shock. And then he might not even get food for 2 or 3 hours after that. We filed a pleading with the federal judge who was considering his habeas, saying, bring him back here. It's called a habeas corpus attest of a condom. In case you want him to testify at his hearing, you either bring him back now or he may not be available to be brought back because he may be dead. And after looking at his medical records, the judge became extremely concerned and said, I'm not bringing him back here, but I'm changing my judgment commitment order. I want him to go to a federal medical facility. So they sent him to Springfield. Well, that apparently upset the Bureau of Prisons. For the second time, he had gone out of their system to complain about his treatment, and this time somebody listened. So we got to Springfield. They didn't put him in a federal medical facility. They put him in a holding area where he was in isolation. He was in his cell for 23 hours a day. If he had a medical problem, they couldn't take him out of his cell unless they could get 3 guards and a lieutenant because of his security clearance. Now, we questioned why, and we found out it was because that's the way they treat everybody who comes from an SMU, special monitoring unit, to a medical facility. That's what we were told. We challenged why he was ever sent to an SMU informally, directly to the Bureau of Prisons. They looked into it. At first they were misinformed as to why he was there. When we challenged it and asked them to look at the documentation, they did and acknowledged that the only incidents he'd had in his entire stay in the federal system was the praying in a group of 3 and trying to communicate the punishment for that to his attorney and his wife by email, which he thought was going to be taken away the next day, but apparently they thought it was taken away that day, and that was the second incident. They're sending him the email saying, you won't hear from me for the next 30 days, I'm being punished, right? We'll have to communicate by regular letter. Those are the only 2. And they acknowledged eventually that that was clearly improper support to send him to an SMU. So they removed that designation, but they still kept him in the same conditions. We then came to find out that one of the justifications for that, in fact, the only justification on the review that they do either each week or each month for keeping somebody in solitary confinement, was based on his being a former Marine who trained with the Taliban to fight American soldiers in Afghanistan. Now that information was totally wrong. The only thing correct about that information was that he was a former Marine. He never trained with the Taliban. He never intended or wanted to fight American soldiers in Afghanistan. And there was never even an allegation of that. That allegedly was taken out of his folder, but the next thing you know, when he's being transferred, the medical place, it did get his blood sugar under control, but they were having trouble finding a place to transfer him, so they wound up transferring him to a communication monitoring unit within the ADX, which is the Supermax. This is where Moussaoui is, Ted Kaczynski is. This is where the worst mafia guys go. This is where the, you know, the worst of the worst go, the people who you can't control. And Chapman's offense that got him to that while he was in the Bureau of Prisons was praying in a group of three and communicating with his lawyer that he was going to be punished. And now that's why he's in this Supermax. It's insane. We just found out now that since he's been in Florence, in the ADX, they have stopped giving him sliding scale insulin, which is the long-acting stuff. So his blood pressure, you know, goes down and then it goes up to over 300, 400, you know, and it's not going to be long before that type of treatment kills him unless the Bureau of Prisons steps in and does something. We've written letters to them to complain. He's doing it administratively within the system over in Colorado. But the Bureau of Prisons, in my opinion, when it is so autonomous and out of control, and the courts are so reluctant to step in and do anything, that they have the power to murder their prisoners, which is what they're doing to him. They're doing it slowly, but they are murdering him.